This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name is Stuart Wright, and today's guest is the co-host of the Oscars, What Were They Thinking? He is a film nerd and screenwriter, and he co-hosts with legendary comedian and writer of over 25 Oscar telecasts, Bruce Vilanch. I'm talking about Adam Tex Davis. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Stuart. And I'm so excited to talk to you and to your listeners.
Fantastic. I'm excited too. We will talk about your podcast. And of course, we will be sharing 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Does that sound like what you signed up for?
Oh, absolutely. Although I got to say, just 3. That's tough. For a film nerd like me, 3, just 3. Oh, okay.
Well, the thing is, this is the point of the format is I don't want to get people to say what their favorite 3 are necessarily all the time, because I think we know there's kind of a convergent point, and I think your podcast sort of plays to that, the way that consensus seems to work with the way things end up winning things and becoming the best of and whatever. Whereas the film that lasted in your memory as a watcher, or for whatever reason, is a very different beast. I mean, it can be one and the same as well, because obviously nostalgia plays a huge part in how we consume any popular culture and much of mass media. I don't know what you think.
No, that's a good point. I mean, there's only like certain number of films that actually inspired you. I mean, it was very obvious which film was the film that made me want to make films or write films or work in film. So that was a no-brainer. But then trying to stay away from Star Wars, because everybody my age or our age, Star Wars is probably one of the biggest influences. But I put that aside. No Star Wars. So I have the one that really made me want to make films, and then I had 2 others that are definitely huge influences. So Brilliant. I'm excited to talk about them.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll keep that in the locker room for now. So. Yep. Let's talk about your podcast then, to share with people what it is you like to do on the internet highways. The Oscars, what were they thinking? Let's first of all, do you want to just give a brief sort of introduction as to what the podcast is? I mean, there's a clue in the title, but do you want to sort of expand on it for us?
Absolutely. So basically, the what were they thinking is almost like has a double meaning, because basically what we're doing is we're looking back at the Oscars of the past, using the test of time and using that lens, like what did they get right? What did they get wrong? What were the snubs, the flubs, the oversights? And you can basically go back to any year and find some real head scratchers. How was this not nominated? How was this the winner over this? Obviously it all started with a conversation I was having with an editor on a project where we were talking about how the Oscars, you almost shouldn't have the Oscars at the end of the year. It's too soon. It's too soon to know what movie is really the best movie. Like, we should be doing the Oscars for 10 years ago. That should be today's Oscars, and then we could really have a sense of what movie has stood the test of time. And then I just started going back through the old Oscars, and every single year I was like, what? Why? For example, 1961 Oscars for the movies of 1960. 3 movies came out in 1960 that are currently on the American Film Institute's top 100 American films of all time. 3 came out in 1960 that are on that list. Only one of them was even nominated.
Wow.
And it did win the Oscar, so that was The Apartment. But 2 movies that you would be like, wait, what? Spartacus and Psycho came out that year.
1960.
Neither one was nominated, not even nominated. So I was like, okay, yeah, there's something here. And then I started talking to my partner, Jerry Colbert. We have a company called Atomic Entertainment.
Okay.
And we do TV, we do movies, we do docs, we do, and now we're doing podcasts. And, I was telling him about the idea. And then we had a connection to Bruce Vilanch. And we would go out to LA and we would see Bruce. We would have dinner with him. And he and I got along really well. I'm a comedy writer. He's a comedy writer. We'd make each other laugh. And then after about 3 or 4 dinners, I said, you know what? I've got this idea. And I brought it up. And, Bruce, of course, he wrote for the Oscars for 25 plus years. So he's like the perfect Oscar authority. And I started telling him about the 1961 Oscars for the movies in 1960. And he starts explaining to me why Psycho wasn't nominated. And I say, okay, maybe back then it shouldn't have been. But looking back now, right, we would swap that out with Sons and Lovers or The Alamo starring John Wayne, right? We'd take those away and we'd put Psycho and Spartacus in there. And we started going back and forth. And Jerry was just like, okay, well, this is the show. So when I say, the Oscars, what were they thinking? It has a double meaning. I mean, for me, I'm like, what were they thinking? How could they possibly have made these mistakes? And Bruce is more like, no, here's what they were thinking. And he tells you what was going through the minds probably of the Academy voters and why certain things happen. We don't always agree, but it's like, it's like the Siskel and Ebert. Like it makes it a better show that we're butting heads.
Indeed, and I certainly like that aspect. And I must admit, when I first dived into it, I was expecting the sort of, the classic debate, which is, for example, the 1980 when is it? Let me just check my notes again. Sorry, 1981. Sorry, where Ordinary People beats Raging Bull, and the idea that Martin Scorsese would have to wait a long time for his Oscar and the like. I knew that was a famous sort of one because, people don't talk about Ordinary People, but they talk a lot about Raging Bull still.
Of course.
Which fires into your logic that we maybe shouldn't have the Oscars straight after the year finishes. We should have a holding period. But as we know, the Oscars are a chance to almost like market films that there literally is an award season, isn't there, for when we go see a movie. And it's great because suddenly we get this period where maybe not the obvious franchises and blockbusters are in the big cinemas and we can get to see in something resembling interesting movies. And also and when you talk about the reasons why and you look at, say, Ricky Gervais's joke with Kate Winslet in Extras, where he tells her in the comedy, you should do a Holocaust now. And this isn't being flippant about the Holocaust by any stretch, but he says you should do a Holocaust movie, or that'll get you an Oscar. And then he's doing the Emmys speech, and he points her out. And he goes, "Told you, you should have done when she wins it for the reader." I think it was.
Yes.
I mean, what do you think between over the period you've been doing it? Because you're not doing it in any, or you're picking years. They're not like a linear thing. You're not going. What's a pattern you found about those that win and those that get nominated, those that don't but deserve to be, or how does a classic get lost in the moment in time? What things are you thinking you're finding?
There is no real rhyme or reason. Sometimes it's based on the period, like, the 1940s, there's a lot of war stuff going on. So war pictures are being nominated, we just did the 1950, 1955 Oscars or basically we did, I'm sorry. It was the 1965 Oscars for the films of 1964 and nuclear war was on everybody's mind. So Dr. Strangelove is nominated. The movie Failsafe had come out. 7 Days in May was also out, and these movies were getting different nominations. So there was a lot of nuclear war on everybody's mind. But then My Fair Lady wins. And I was like appalled because of the 5 nominees. My Fair Lady was by far, to me, the worst of the 5 movies that came out that year that were nominated. So as far as patterns, it's like the biggest pattern is don't be surprised by anything they do. It's like you can't understand it. And what's funny is you mentioned the 1981 Oscars. So that's actually our show that's coming out next. I'm not sure when this is going to broadcast, but that's going to be our we just did that Oscars.
Okay.
And, it is funny because to me, Raging Bull obviously is one of the greatest movies ever made. And I got to see it in the theater in 1990 because they brought it back for a limited run because it won the critics, I forget which critical body, but it won the best film of the 1980s, the entire decade. It won the best film of the decade, but it wasn't the best film of 1980 for some reason, according to the Academy.
Yeah.
So that's the logic I use. But then Bruce will say, yes, but critics are critics and the Academy is different. The Academy is actually made up of people who make movies and they have a different insight into it. But I'm like, but I think most of the Academy would look back and say, I think Raging Bull is a better movie than Ordinary People, even though Ordinary People is an extraordinary movie. So,
and doing it opposite Bruce, and like you say, he sort of with his background, he sort of has a kind of level of expertise that few would have, I suppose, an insight into it. So, what have you learned then about the rhyme and reason of Oscars from him? In terms of you going, oh, what the hell is this movie doing, or why isn't this one in it? What has he kind of shed light on for you? And obviously, if listeners go to the podcast, they'll begin to learn this too about how the Oscars work.
Well, the first thing that the most important thing I think that he shed light on was that there's different branches of the Academy.
Okay,
and each of those branches are the ones that nominate the films or the performances in their branch. So the director's branch nominates the directors. The actor's branch, which is the largest branch in the Academy, they nominate the actors.
Okay.
And then everybody, once you have the nominees, then the entire Academy votes on the nominees. But the nominees come from the different branches, which is why a lot of times, especially in the writing awards, because I'm always, as a screenwriter myself, I'm always looking at the writing awards, adapted and original.
Yeah.
A lot of times you see movies in the writing awards that don't appear anywhere else. And it's like, because the writers are recognizing the writing that they almost wish they had done. So that's why a lot of times, strange movies pop up in the writing category because the writers are like, no, this is a really well-written movie, even if it didn't become a best picture or the performances or whatever. So that was a big, eye opener for me.
Mm-hmm. So I guess a stopwatch is right twice a day, isn't it? So in that sense, in what you've picked over, then has there been a year that you've discovered where actually the Oscars actually weren't far off in terms of what they nominated and what they chose as winners?
I would say this: a lot of the winners, I'm okay with.
Yeah.
I'm okay with a lot of the winners, and I understand certain things, especially when Bruce gives the context of time.
Yeah.
But I'm always shocked by things that were left out that didn't get nominated at all.
Yeah.
And then there's things I loved the year, it was a 1986 Oscars, I think, for the 1985 movies. So it was Out of Africa versus The Color Purple were the two big juggernauts that year. And they each had a ton of nominations. Out of Africa wins, I think 9 awards out of the 13 they were nominated for. Color Purple is completely shut out. But then what's funny is Color Purple is nominated for every single category except director. Steven Spielberg left off the list. And I'm like, Bruce, I know you don't believe in snubs, but come on, that has to be a snub. That has to be a concerted effort to say we're not going to nominate. And he even said Steven Spielberg didn't want to do the project. He's like, I'm a white Jew from Arizona. What do I know about The Color Purple and the slave experience? And I can't do it. And Quincy Jones essentially said, no, you're the only one in the world that can get this movie made. So you have to do it. So he does it. And it gets nominations galore, Best Picture, every actor, the score, this, except director. And I'm like, I think that's a snub. And then I say, but here's the thing. You know what? Take Out of Africa and Color Purple, put them aside. The best movie that came out that year is Back to the Future. and I will die on that hill.
That was that's the most recent episode I've listened to. And it did make me laugh that, and the idea that certainly in the 80s, we'd have a genre pick like Back to the Future winning multiple awards, which, still difficult to this day is not so unlikely. And certainly with the advent of things like, stunt people getting awards and VFX getting awards, which I think in the 80s, they still didn't do that, did they? It was still a very basic list of stuff. What's been your, one last question, I guess. What's been your favourite year to cover, and what did that unearth for you in terms of the Oscars that you did, prior to doing this show, you hadn't really thought about?
Well, I'll tell you what. My favorite decade of movies is the 70s.
Okay,
the 70s is both the hardest and the most fun because there are so many good candidates.
Yeah,
and that's when it gets like, how do you? And, that's the funny thing. You're giving an award to a movie or to a performance. It's all arbitrary. It's all subjective. It's not baseball. Roy Scheider can't score a run in the end, and win the best actor for Jaws because, he hit a walk-off home run or something. Like, it's all subjective. And, look, Roy Scheider wasn't even nominated. Nobody got nominated from Jaws. What? Some of the best acting you'll ever see. So it's like, but you're pitting movies like Cuckoo's Nest against Jaws and Network against Taxi Driver and, Godfathers and, every single movie that wins in the 70s for the most part is a great movie. But every movie but most of the movies that lose the Oscar in the 70s are also great movies. So to me, that's the most fun when we do the 70s. To your point earlier, yes, we bounce around. I try to every episode, I try to pick a different decade, jump around. It's like, okay, we did the 60s and the 80s. Now we'll do the 70s and the 50s. Then I'm going to owe a 40s, and then I'll do a 2000s. So we try to bounce around all the time.
And I'm guessing, I listen to it on Spotify, but people can get the Oscars podcast wherever they listen to their podcast, yeah?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I will put a link in the show notes. And it just gives me to say thank you very much for sharing that on your podcast, The Oscars. What were they thinking? And now we shall move seamlessly along into 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life.
Sure.
It is funny talking to, well, obviously I have this with every guest. It's sort of the idea, like you said at the beginning, the idea of boiling down a chat about my film watching life into 3 films is a difficult thing, but you've done it, and I've got 3 films, of which we're going to do in the order that you gave them to me. And every time we hear this sound, which you can hear at your end, okay?
Yes.
Perfect. That is the sound of 5 minutes being up, and we move on to the next movie, because we could talk about any of these films for hours on end, I'm pretty sure. So this alarm allows me to passive-aggressively tell guests to shut up, and we move on to the next one. I'm far too polite for all that, you see. So your first movie is an iconic movie that arguably put its director well and truly on the map and on the road to a career that would endure to the present and beyond, it seems. It's a creature feature adapted from an airport novel of the same name that infamously withheld seeing the creature for as long as possible. I'm talking about Steven Spielberg's Jaws from 1975. So tell us, where does this fit in your film watching life?
I would say this is the film undoubtedly that made me want to make movies.
Okay.
In some capacity, whether it was writing, directing, I was like, I grew up, I loved creature movies. I loved the monster movies. I used to watch with my father all the time, the Frankensteins, the werewolves. And then I loved sharks as a kid as well. So here's this movie, Jaws. And, when it came out in 1975, I think I was only like 4 years old. So I didn't see it until probably another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But I do remember it coming on TV, and my father And well, I wanted to see it, and my father was excited to watch it with me. So I knew there was something, because I knew he had seen it in the theater.
Right.
And he was excited to watch it with me. And we watched this movie, and I'm like, there's something so much better and so much different than any other creature movie. I've seen movies about giant alligators and Bigfoot and all, and those are all, they're fun, but this is like a real movie, and I care about these characters, and oh my God. And then the movie's going along, and there's amazing shots and the panic and the music, and it's all working in a way that I had never experienced before. And I was like, I want to make movies. I want to make movies about sharks. I want to make movies like this. It was just, to me, it was like a perfect movie. And I'm so glad that it really did like get credit, and, it started the blockbuster weekend, craze. It was nominated for an Oscar. So it did get some recognition, even though Spielberg was left off, not nominated for Jaws.
Again.
Crazy. Yeah. Crazy. And none of the actors, Robert Shaw, fantastic, one of the greatest characters ever in movies. No supporting actor for him. So the point is, I just loved it. And it taught me a lot about screenwriting, the rocket booster character who comes in somewhere near the middle of the movie and takes the movie to another level. The Quint character does that. And then just hearing the story like, oh, the mechanical shark didn't work, so they had to figure out new ways to shoot it. And the confidence of a new director like Spielberg to come up with these innovative ways and teach you how, like, oh yeah, actually less is more sometimes. And and my father always told the story when he saw the movie in the theater with my mom. Yeah. She almost broke his hand squeezing it so tight when the head comes out of the hole in the boat when they're underwater, and then the friend's boat, and the head comes out, and she just nearly crushed his hand. He's still like, I saw when that scene came on, he started rubbing his hand instinctively.
Well, funny enough, for me, Jaws was the first film I ever watched on VHS at home.
Nice.
So that fits in nicely for me. And I think you're right on the screenwriting front. I think, I don't know about you, but it's interesting. And I called it a creature feature sort of on purpose, because in a way, while obviously the shark gets the headlines, when we go back to the screenplay, the villain of the piece is Maury Hamilton, Vaughan, the mayor of the town. He's the pain in the ass for Roy Schneider. The shark is obviously the symptom, but the mayor not shutting the beach down is the enemy of the story. And I think that's it's almost like the film breaks into two. There's the battle against the mayor that he loses, and then it's the one-on-one against the shark. It gets boiled down to a classic sort of hero's journey in the end.
Yeah, it really does embody everything. And the fact that they got politics into this movie, and you see greed and corruption play a part in it. And yes, you're right. It is a movie in two parts. And also, I mean, I was thinking like, yes, it really does encompass everything, because there's man versus nature, obviously, against the shark. There's man versus himself. Are they able to do this? They're having their own doubts and stuff. It's man versus man, because Quint and Hooper are going at it. The chief and Quint, everybody's sort of against each other. And then, of course, obviously, behind the scenes, it's man versus machine.
Finish your thought. Go on.
It's man versus machine, as the shark didn't work, and they had to figure it out. But yeah, it's such a great movie.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that. We shall move swiftly along to your second choice, which had 15 babies playing the quintuplets at the centre of this movie, starring Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter, as well as Randall Tex Cobb. Any relation, Adam?
No, but I got the text from people like Randall Tex Cobb. I was like, I love that nickname. I love it.
I'm talking about the Coen brothers film Raising Arizona from 1987. Tell us, where does that fit in your film watching life?
So I'm in high school, and I'm already I'm loving writing. I'm really enjoying writing, but I'm also not sure what I want to do, whether it's creative writing. I was also an editor on the school paper, so I was into journalism. Yeah. And then I watched this movie, Raising Arizona, and it kind of blows me away. Just in terms of its use of comedy, but it's like every kind of comedy in one movie. It's dark comedy, it's light comedy, it's character-based comedy, it's dialogue, it's slapstick, the fight scenes, but like, every character is lovable, even if they're bad guys. And it's just such a brilliant use of every type of comedy. And the camera is doing funny things too. Like it's firing on all cylinders. And it really just, like, when I went into film school a couple of years later, I was like, I want to make movies like Raising Arizona. I want my camera whipping down hallways and whipping across things. And, I want every extra, even if they're barely in the movie, they still have a funny line, even if it's off camera. Like everything works about that movie. And it's just such a perfect little movie. And it's an hour and a half. It's an hour and a half. They pack all that movie into an hour and a half. It's embarrassing that these movies today have to be 2+ hours to have all, to get their point across. It's like they did it in an hour and a half, and it's poetic and it's beautifully written, beautifully shot, beautifully acted. It's, it's just a wonderful movie.
So where did you see it for the first time?
I think I saw it in the theater.
Okay. Do you have
1987.
Do you have any recollections of the cinema you saw it in, comparing it then to now?
It was probably the 10-plex on Route 4 in New Jersey.
Okay.
In Paramus, New Jersey. And I didn't even know what I was getting into. I think I saw a commercial for it. And the music, I think the music hooked me, and just a shot of the camera flying across the supermarket parking lot as he comes running out with the Huggies or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's all I need to see. I'm going to see this thing. And a bunch of my friends, we went to see it. And I think everybody liked it, but I think I loved it. And I wouldn't shut up about it. And they we're at the diner afterwards, and they're like, okay, stop talking, but I was like, I can't wait to see it again.
And did you go to the cinema? Did you go to the theater again to watch it? Is that?
I don't think so. Only because that's not. I'm not a rewatch kind of guy on purpose. There's so many good movies out there, but I'm always looking for the next thing. So it's like I have, if I have a choice to see the same movie 3 times or 3 different movies, I'll always go for 3 different movies. But I did recently rewatch Raising Arizona. Like, I'll find a reason to rewatch something, like somebody hasn't seen it. Oh, my daughter hasn't seen it. Perfect. Let's put it on and rewatch it. So I'll do that.
And so is this a film you have rewatched with your daughter?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And how did it translate then as to 21st century audiences?
She loved it. She thought it was great. I was so happy. I was so happy that she was enjoying it. And I was doing check-ins, half hour goes in. I'm like, you're digging this, right? This is fun, right? And she's like, yeah. And then in another 20 minutes, I was like, that was great, right? Look, I still don't understand how they got that shot. They must have done it in reverse or something, where Randall Tex Cobb throws a knife and Nicolas Cage holds up this 2x4, and the knife goes into the 2x4. I mean, maybe they had a mechanical thing in the 2x4 or something, but it was like one of the coolest shots that I'm still, trying to figure out how they exactly did it. And it's just brilliantly done. And no Oscars, no nothing, not even for the song, not even nothing. It didn't get anything. No cinematography, no acting. Holly Hunter did get nominated that same year for Broadcast News. Okay. So it wasn't a more prestigious movie than, Your Award Hog from Hell. But it's such a good movie.
I mean, I think a bit like what you were saying about caring about characters in Jaws. One of the interesting things about... Oh, there goes the alarm. I'll finish my thought. One interesting thing I think that the Coen brothers consistently do when they do a film that's got humor in it, and I can think of like Fargo is one of the one that flies closest to being a straight drama while still having humor. Whereas I think Raised in Arizona is humor with drama, and I think that's the bit that is often the hard line to walk. It's like, where do I get my gags, and then how do I keep making sure the audience comes along with me for the story? Because we can, skit comedy has existed, SNL has existed for a long time, but doing a 90-minute laugh or laughs over a 90-minute period while telling a story is not as straightforward as it would seem, is it?
No. I mean, look, you got to be a genius if you're going to make kidnapping funny.
Yeah, I think on that thought, we shall move on to your final choice. Right. This is one of the only films to feature more than 3 times on this podcast that I do. I mean, the 1970s is definitely, and it might obviously speak to people, the fact that people of my generation seem to be drawn to come on and talk about films. But certainly this film that we're about to talk about, I mean, it's a piece of prime 1970s new Hollywood, isn't it? It's full of lines that people love to quote to this day. Are you looking at me, Adam, by any chance? I'm talking about Scorsese and De Niro's second movie together, Taxi Driver, something you referred to as the ultimate character movie. So tell us a little bit more about why this film had such an impact on you.
It just was one of those films where I'm like, this is a dark, disturbing movie about a character who you don't know where they stand on, like, are they mentally ill? Are they a truth speaker? Are they a hero? Are they an anti-hero? They sometimes seem to have good intentions. They're also very naive, but it's such a complex character. I had never seen anything like it. And, the violence at the end is like, it's all building up like a volcano just erupts at the end there. And it just really opened my eyes to like the craft of filmmaking, but like it's a small movie at its heart. It just really, like, you can write a movie about a guy in a room. A lot of it just takes place in a room, and if it's done right, it has a huge impact. And the funny thing is, later I realized that Scorsese, he based a lot of Taxi Driver on the Robert Bresson movie Pickpocket, which was a 1959 movie about a guy who spends a lot of time talking to the camera in a room. And Scorsese said, hey, I realized from that movie I could make a movie about a guy in a room. And so it's like he passed the torch on to me about, a guy in a room saying things to the camera that works. And I will say, it influenced me in the sense that, like, okay, now it's like I'm into film and I want to go to film school. Martin Scorsese went to NYU or taught at NYU. And I was like, yeah, that's where I want to go. Mm-hmm. So that's where I wound up going, to NYU. And I think a lot of that is Taxi Driver, Raging Bull. We're like, yeah, I'm going to NYU because of these movies.
I mean, for me, this film probably got me into screenwriting. I think in many ways, I got hold of a copy of Paul Schrader's screenplay. This published, sure. Before the internet made every screenplay available. I got one of the Faber and Faber's published versions, and I think Taxi Driver was the first screenplay that I read where I thought to myself, I can see the movie. Whereas before, it always felt like a very technical document. And I can understand what it was doing, but I thought the way that Schrader wrote gave the reader some fun, as well as being an instruction on how to make a movie. And that kind of a combination of him and Walter Hill's screenplays, kind of what influenced the way I like to write. And I don't know about, I mean, for you, what's a sort of favorite moment in Taxi Driver for you? Where do you think it kind of? Because in a way, you could argue Mean Streets and Taxi Driver just happened at the same time. I mean, if it was an anthology movie about New York, you wouldn't go, oh, this has never happened.
I will say this: Mean Streets is okay. I like it. I don't love it. Mm-hmm. And there's great scenes in Mean Streets when he jumps up on the pool table, and swinging the pool stick at everybody. But Mean Streets feels like an amateur movie. Yeah. And Taxi Driver, I don't know how he became so much better so quickly. But Taxi Driver, maybe in part because of the script, maybe in part because everybody was just had a little bit more under their belt. Yeah. But it really, the screenwriting is fantastic. But the way Scorsese brings that to life, everything from the slow motion shots of the cab and the smoke coming out from the manhole covers, just seeing almost any still from that. And then when he shows up with the mohawk haircut. I got a mohawk in college, in part because of Taxi Driver. And I'm like, am I going insane? Like, what am I doing? But it's like, I just, everything with that character, the scene where he goes to the store and shoots the mugger for the first time, there's so many great scenes.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that with us. Well, that brings us to the end of our 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Thank you for sharing with us your memories of Jaws, Raised in Arizona, and Taxi Driver, as well as taking us through what your podcast is about. Is there any news on the horizon or things people can look forward to in terms of what you're up to, or in your film world as well as your podcast world? Anything you can share?
Well, let's see. I mean, I'm always writing new screenplays, so it's interesting. Like the business has changed a lot. So I've been, I will say, for any writers out there, the biggest thing the best thing you can do is be versatile. Versatility is such a great skill to have, because if you're locked into something and that door gets closed for whatever reason, because there's a lot of, as a writer, you're depending on other people, executives, studios, to get your projects out there. So the more you can do, the better. So I've done a little bit of everything. I've done screenwriting, I've done TV, I've done documentary, I've done informational television, I've done scripted TV, I've done, now I'm doing a lot of podcasting. So yeah, just be versatile. Look, I write every day, which is great. Every day I'm writing on I'm doing something. So and get to scratch that writing itch. But I do my project like you were saying before. You did a project on your own, and sometimes it's hard to find time to do your own projects, but do them because you get better by writing. So the more you do, the better you get, and the more you can do, the better. The more likely you'll be writing for a living as opposed to working at Foot Locker.
That is sound advice, Adam. Just gives me then to say thank you very much for joining us on the Britflix podcast.
My pleasure.
Hey there, Hugh from Podderation here, and if you like today's show, we think you'll love Thanks for Playing. Join Matt and Lucas every week as they explore the wide breadth of the world of video games, talking about their favourites, talking about new releases, talking about old classics, talking about everything that makes video games some of our favourite hobbies out there. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website at podderation.com.